up the mic.
But I'm super pumped to have Amy Morris on today and getting to interview you. A little bit about these interviews. It's kind of like, you know, getting people who don't know you to know you a little bit better and kind of your background. So, you know, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I started out as a strategist. So I first started in Chicago because I wanted to be in New York, but out of college, I just didn't have the funds to go to New York right away. So I went to Chicago, which was a much more affordable town, but, you know, food was still a big deal there. I mean, there's a lot of big food.
Oh, yeah.
Hospitality companies and restaurants. And so I worked as a strategist starting in food, which was great, you know, and that was back in the 90s. So food, there weren't celebrity chefs. Food was not a big TV spectacle, or Bon Appetit wasn't the magazine everyone was reading. It was, you know, just kind of part of normal day. I started there in food in Chicago, and then I went on, I got recruited from Chicago to New York to work for an ad agency in strategy. And from there, I landed as a strategist for DoubleClick, which was founded by Kevin O'Connor, and a lot of people know Kevin Ryan as well from New York, who was one of their fourth employees, so really a big part of the company as well. And worked with them taking DoubleClick public and helping the New York ad industry understand the internet. So that's how long ago it was. At that point, the internet had just been introduced, and no one believed it was here to stay. Everyone believed it was this trend that would be come and go, and it was just a little gadget. No one was going to take it seriously. And Kevin O'Connor and I worked really hard at how do you think about that message so that people will listen, that it's not a trend. This is huge. This is going to change the way we do business, and change the way we communicate. And so we had to be very creative, and at every step, like we would host these dinners, but to get people to the dinner, we would deliver a bottle of wine, but the bottle of wine would be in a special box, and the box would have a message on it. And inside the box, the label for the wine would be thought about so that it was created specifically for the person getting the wine. So the bottle had all this meaning to them. So really put a lot of thought, because it was really the top ad executives in New York, like the top 20. You know, and they were lauded with all kinds of gifts, but we wanted them to really think. So we really tried to make them think at every step. So there was that. And then I went on to work with Richard Branson on strategy. Had so much fun working with him on strategy that he asked me to come to the Melbourne Cup with him and work a little bit on strategy there, which was just more of a fun. And then went on to work with Condé Nast and all of the editors on strategy. But everyone there knew that I was a design person, and that on the side I was designing. And at one point I met, New York is that kind of place where you just kind of run into people and meet people from around the world. And I met someone who said, listen, I'll let you come design my house or help me design my house. If I like what you do, I'm going to give you all my clients. I mean, that doesn't happen all the time, right? You know, that is a very New York story. That's what I love about New York. It's just like sparks happening every day. It is the city of sparks, which is great. So I designed his place. He loved it. He gave me all his clients, and that kind of just got me down that path away from strategy, thinking like, okay, what do I want to do with design? And then I realized, well, I really want to design restaurants. And so I heard about a cafe in the neighborhood that was going to open, went to the owner.
What was the first one?
Yeah, Annex in Fort Greene. So, and that became a community hub. And the owner of that cafe and I have become very close. But at the beginning, she was like, why would I hire you? And I said, okay, here's why you're going to hire me. Not only will I design your cafe, I will launch your cafe. I will help you with the menu for the cafe. Like, you won't have to worry about anything. I will take care of it all. And I put together a whole proposal. And she said, you know, I'm approached all the time, but you like kind of just really outlined everything. You tied it up in a neat bow, and I just felt like I was in good hands. So I did that, and it was the first cafe, and that was taking a chance. I remember opening Annex, I really had such a pit in my stomach the first week, because at that point, everything in Brooklyn was barnwood Edison bulbs,
You're like,
leather chairs, plaid sofas, dark, moody. I mean, Brooklyn had not seen the influence of Sydney, which was bright and light and colors and, open windows. That was not something happening in New York. It's now everywhere in New York, but I remember the staff at the annex talk, I could overhear them and they say, why is this all white? They were not happy. And I remember going to get the plants for the planters and just like being so sad and thinking how, I really love this design, but I haven't made the client happy. But then it opened and the neighborhood really was drawn to it. People, I mean, you cannot get a seat in this cafe. It's just constantly packed with people.
Well, you made me think of something. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
No.
I
found, especially in the creative world, sometimes it's hard to like you're a go-getter. And that's what I mean by also inspiring me. Like, I can do this and I can do all these things. And so, so much about having these conversations is like, how do you build up the courage? Or like, I don't know. It's obviously in some people, but I think
you have it too. So
totally. I totally agree with you. And I always say, just be like, hey, this is my offering, or like, but I'm curious to hear how you would describe that. Like, how do you like put yourself out there in a way that doesn't feel like I'm selling?
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. I mean, there's so much, but I think if you want to put yourself out there and want to be heard, think about the person you're talking to. What do they need? How can you help them and make their life easier? I think in the most simple sense, I give this advice to people going into jobs all the time. Yeah, don't go to your boss and say, I have a problem and it's blowing up. I mean, that is the worst thing you want to hear. You want to say, listen, we had a problem, or we have a problem, and here's what I think should be done to solve the problem. Yeah. Let someone know you thought about it, you care, and like you're a critical thinker. I mean, if you just, the person you're talking to wants to feel taken care of. So I think that's number one. Number two is a lot of people are intimidated to talk to people. And I think you've got one life on this planet, and you've got to kind of just go for your dreams and try to connect with people you want to connect with. And what's the worst thing? You don't connect with them, but maybe something else happens along the way that sparks another idea or sparks another relationship. I think it's about forward momentum. Yeah. And it doesn't take a lot to have forward momentum. I think people sitting, not sure what to do, think, I just don't know how I'm going to get to Z. And they only look at the huge path ahead. How about just looking, what could be the next step you take? What's the first step? Just do that first step and you will be shocked how much momentum that creates.
Like, you don't have to get to Z yet. Go to B first.
Write the list of what you think the steps are in getting there. And then maybe, that will feel good. And then maybe from that list, you'll realize, oh, I know someone who might be able to help me. And then you talk to that person, and now you have more momentum. That person knows someone now you have more momentum. It just really take the baby steps, and that's all you need to do. And it will.
Guys, I interrupted you. So, you got into design, you did this first place in Fort Greene.
Yeah. And then
it, and
what?
People end up loving, the neighborhood.
Despite being one of the first bright places, it did really well. And I I'm not saying I'm the only one that sparked that change in the design of cafes in New York. I'm sure others at the time, but the Annex was one of the first cafes to be light and bright. So that did spark a trend. Then went on to, first co-founded the MP Shift, won the James Beard for Restaurant 2018 for a project I led, which was really, blew me away. I never thought I'd start a design agency and then win the top award. So that was pretty exciting.
I remember that.
And that, goes to show, all I did was take the first step by going to a woman in my neighborhood and saying like, hey, I want to design this. Give me a chance. I know I can do it. Did it. I didn't say, oh, I want a James Beard and how am I going to ever do that? It's like, okay, I want to design. Let's start there. Yeah. Worked with everyone from Sweet Green to Danny Meyer to now some big developers in London, about to launch the first wellness building in Europe at the beginning of next year. So designing all of the food hall, the speakeasy, the restaurant, So the whole floor of this wellness building, the F&B floor, I've co-designed with an agency in London called Design LSM, and I've really loved working with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
So yeah, started as a strategist and then a creative director. But the thing is, owning an agency and being a creative director takes a lot of strategy, and creativity takes a lot of strategy. So what's been great is I've developed a process for creating brand identities for restaurants. And my process allows my team to go through that process to be creative. I think often people think to be creative, you need this divine intervention and you're a special person that has this gene that just ideas flow. I think often having a process to help bring out those ideas really is so important. And I think if you don't do that, you could either end up doing the same kind of creative all the time and getting stuck in a certain style, which I've seen a lot with agencies, where our agency really tries to respond specifically to that client and develop a brand that feels like their personality. And I'd love to talk through that process at another time, but it's a long, I would need visuals and all, but
I was getting to be with you that one time you were working on a project and it was about finding the right name, which is really hard.
Yeah, names are hard.
Find a name.
And I don't think names are my strength at all. I mean, but I do have a that as well, you know, and I take my clients through that process. And it's funny that they always the clients love the naming process. I find it's really hard because it's so personal and it really needs to come from the founders. But I'm happy to, you know, bring the process to bring it out. But I think with creativity, I know just the kind of segueing to that, I do think too often people do think it's divine intervention. And I think that everyone has their own process to be creative. And you have to honor your process. I think my husband has been incredible at teaching me that. I mean, so many times I'll be doing a job or someone will ask me to be a part of something that I'm like, are they kidding? They want me to help them with a strategy to go public? Like what, like I remember being I was 28. Like, why did you hire me to help DoubleClick go public? I don't understand. And my husband's like, follow your process. There's a reason you're always having success. So what is that process? And that was the first time I started kind of writing down my process and thinking what my process was. And he was right. I just kept going back to the process and I kept getting great results. So if you are getting good results, why is that? I would try to templatize your process. And I know that sounds boring. People think creatives have these messy offices and it's just divine intervention. But I mean, I can't think unless I have clarity. I need like a process. I need a clean space. But I'm also someone who you have to honor that I do have a lot of ideas, and when I can sit and talk with other people who are inspiring as well, I think we go back and forth and create ideas. But to come up with the best idea, I need a couple of days to ruminate. When it sits with me, and then I end up talking to Jim and Connor and Carolina, and you know, I go for a walk, or there's things kind of ruminate and come together in a different way. And usually that idea that I think I will never find the solution, it just, boom, it comes to me. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's absolutely the direction we should go and how we should think about it. So I would say honor your own process and try to nail down what your process is.
Yeah.
But also I think creativity is often just a slip. It's not always this big moment. And you know, I think we were talking about this, like Sweet Green is a great example. Like Sweet Green is one of the most rated companies. And that was not some, you know, bright new idea. That was an idea that was already well, you know, established in all urban cities, these salad bars. But they came in and thought, how can we do it better? They were brilliant. I mean, just thinking about this locally, but also that social impact. That's so important, and people responded to it. So I think, you know, remember that creativity is not always this huge shift. Sometimes it's a slight shift that brings that forward.
Well, it's also kind of like ever would you say like also ever evolving? It's like,
Yeah,
you don't, you know, you may have success in the beginning, but you have to continue working at it, right? It's like
100%.
reinvent,
Yeah.
not even reinventing the wheel in the biggest way, but just like slightly as,
Yeah, and I think that's where I was successful as a strategist. I never did anything the way it was prescribed to do it.
right.
So I can like think of an example offhand, but I always thought, does that make sense? You know, I mean, maybe we should think about it differently. And I know I was always questioned because I never came at it the way that was always you were told to come at it. But you know, it's sometimes good to try a different method and see what happens.
Yeah. I
So
can
I
just,
don't be afraid to do that.
yeah. You made me think
Um,
about like when one is creating a menu, at least for me, I'll like start and like all of a sudden it's too many ideas. And so, you know, what you just shared really helps. I'm like, okay, let's, yeah, I can keep going. And then I'm like, but I need to narrow down this menu now, like in 5 minutes, right? So,
but you are very expansive. You think very like always. You have so many ideas, and you have such a big capacity to like help, and you always give your time. You're very giving of your time. So yeah, you are. I could see you working on a menu. You'd have. I mean, you're my go-to. It's like call a friend when you want to know anything in the kitchen, phone a friend. But that's fine. I think being expansive is great because you bring so many ideas, and then it's so easy to be like, okay, let's cut. If you can't be a good editor, then call in a friend and say, edit this down, and then I'm going to look at it again. You know, that's a great process. Start expansively and then edit down. I think that's a great process.
you always, speaking of someone who always gives a lot of their time and their ideas, and like I would say that about you for sure, you know?
Yeah. Well, for friends, I'll do anything for friends. I mean, I feel like your friends help you, and that's kind of New York, they're like your family. You know, everyone's away from their family. Well, except
Yeah.
for you, you're unique. But yeah, it's you get a lot back from helping people and learn a lot about yourself in the process too, I think.
Is there someone, you know, I was saying you're very inspiring to me. Is there someone that as of late you're like, oh my God, mind blown? Like, who is this person that you
Yeah,
want?
I do actually. Before we get to that, I just want to say one more thing that about creativity, just because it's core to my agency at the Morris Project. There's a quote from Da Vinci that I really love, and I think it's great for everyone to hear. Is creativity is imagination plus observation. So not everyone has this wild imagination, but we all have some imagination. I think it's the X factor is observation. Like, this is what we're talking about with Spark. Are you talking to people outside of your network, outside of your industry? Are you doing things outside of your world? Like, creativity is not always going to a museum. Sometimes it's going on a hike. Sometimes it's having a talk with someone completely different political view. So I think that observation piece is so important. And I really push my team to go out and observe, all the time. When we were all together in the office, and even now, I mean, I constantly challenge them. What are you doing? What do you look? And we have something every Monday called Mindful Monday, and we share our observations. So then that amplifies this, imagination plus observation. We're not only observing what we're observing, all of us are sharing our observations. So that's really something helpful, even for chefs to do. And that's why you guys go out and do your pop-ups, and you're always trying to bring in more of that observation, which is very helpful.
Yeah. I always say to like anyone that I work with, I'm like, I'd like to think that I'm a teacher, but I'm also a student, and like,
Always.
and the same to everyone here. Like, there's so much that you can show me that hopefully I can show you something in return. But when did you first hear the quote, and when did that like become so much of like your ritual?
Well, it's funny. I think it was when starting the Morris Project, and I was putting together some words for the website and talking to my husband, who is forever a source of like inspiration for me. And he had read the quote, And he read it to me, and I was like, that, you know, he sees how I operate, and he's like, this quote is you spot on. So yeah, Brett was the finder of the quote. So he is someone, to segue to your other question, Brett is always someone who inspires me. I mean, he's the most grounded, insightful person I still have ever met, and so inspired by after knowing him for 20 years or 22.
Yeah. Celebrate an anniversary, I think, now.
Yeah, we just had our 18 wedding anniversary, so that was cool. But recently I was listening to a podcast that a couple of people have recommended with Blake Makowski. He's the founder of Tom's, and he's gone on to start this company called Made For. And I am just blown away. It's a 10-month program that applies the principles of modern neuroscience. He's working with the top scientists at Harvard and MIT. So it's neuroscience, psychology, physiology, and he's focused on making the brain and the body better. So if your brain is clear and your body feels healthy, you're going to contribute more to your community, no doubt. I mean, you know what it feels like when you get up and you're hungover or haven't had enough sleep. You just can't do anything. So, I mean, that's an extreme, but I just look at this program he started is, again, it's a slight shift, right? We've heard of psychology programs for the mind, and we've heard of food programs to get you on a diet, and we've heard of like Get Moving. You know, there's all these programs out here, but now he's shifted this and said, okay, how do we just on the very base level make people feel better? And what I love is the first module, it's a 10 module program. I have not done it, I just heard about it, but 10 module. And the first thing he's realized is that you can only learn a couple of things at a time. So you need 30 days to make a habit. So he's decided he's going to teach you how to hydrate as the first module. So if we all drank enough water, our brain would operate a little bit better. Our body would feel a little bit better. But how much water you need, Caro, is very different than how much water I need, or Jim or Connor. So he helps you figure out how much water you need and helps you get in a habit of having that water. And also it kind of feels good to get through that first module and be like, I can do this one. So then you go on to the next one. And it's just a reminder that like, you got to take care of yourself. And you know, Blake's idea of helping people feel good, body and mind, is really important for everyone's own success moving forward.
You know, I have some questions that I like to ask at each interview.
Sure.
And one of them is, which kind of is connected to what we were speaking about, you know, if you had a dinner party, and Amy and I have had many dinner parties.
We love a dinner
party.
party.
You know, choose 3 people, alive or not, to be at your dinner. Who would they be and why?
Well, that's hard if it's only 3 people, and I think it would change.
I want it to be 10 again too.
Well, I have a bunch. I mean, I'll start. I mean, Bill Murray would be my number 1. I mean, how could you not want Bill Murray at your dinner party? I think it's so important to have a sense of fun, and to like, no one's going to be creative if they're not relaxed. So I couldn't think of a better person to relax everyone than Bill Murray and get us laughing and connecting. So he's a real connector. I think there's so many people. I mean, I'm really curious to meet Liz Lambert, who has, you know, she started all these hotels in Texas, and, you know, I was just up in the Berkshires, and I was really impressed by the Tourist Hotel. And, you know, after meeting some people there and getting to know the team, I realized Liz Lambert was behind that hotel. And I'm like, of course she was. Yeah. I mean, because this hotel is so well run and so creative, the way they approach hospitality. I'm just blown away. And yeah, of course, Liz Lambert was behind. I had no idea until I like ended up having dinner with the manager and asking more questions. And
I don't doubt that you will meet her.
I would love to meet Liz Lambert. I'm really fascinated by what Jenna Lyons is now doing. Like what is her next? She was the creative director at J. Crew. She's left J. Crew. She's now started her own company. You know, she's taken a lot of chances. She's had her ups and downs. I'm really fascinated by people who've had those ups and downs and persevered. And that brings me to Dr. Dre. I mean, if you have not seen that HBO, now it's slipping my mind.
What is it?
The Defiant Ones.
Oh, yeah, of course.
The Defiant Ones is one of the most inspiring series I've ever seen. I wish I saw it when I was 16 because it just inspired me endlessly. Not on so many levels, just thinking about Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine and all the tragedy, you just only think about their success because they've worked with every big musician in this world. But those guys were on the brink of some really tough times and they persevered.
Yeah.
Good momentum and bad momentum. You got to get yourself out of the bad momentum and into the good, and
yeah,
happen. But also, I really have a lot of respect for a chef that I've met who's now gone on to do other things. But Magnus Reed in London had a wine bar called Legs, and now he's working on a hotel and a seltzer. But what I love about Magnus is he just goes forward with any project he's interested in going forward with. And, and he really supports the people around him. He has a lot of time and love for the people around him. And he also likes to have a lot of fun. So, and then let's see, I think my last two, one is Will Sharp. He directed and wrote a show called The Flowers, which is the most wackadoodle show you'll see. I do not recommend it to everyone because it is a little off, but I just so impressed that he was willing to take a chance and do something like that, and I found it very funny and out there. And then Nancy Silverton as well is another person who really has kind of paved the way. And
you've worked with her, did a set with her.
Yeah, I'm working with her still. We're working on a kiosk that she's going to be opening in Culver City. It's almost done. We're just working on the pizza oven right now. It's called Pizzette. Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be a huge success. She's just so good at everything she does.
Yeah.
And she's, again, very fun and playful. I remember first time meeting her and she was like, I think you should come and see my closet. That will give you an idea of kind of my personality. And I was like, that is perfect. That's a perfect segue into getting to know. I love it, and very open. I often find that people I'm attracted to most are the most open, because when you're feeling good about yourself, you're open to sharing and, helping others. And
yeah.
So
yeah.
I find all those people to be very open.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking earlier. But back to the Dr. Dre, the Defiant Ones, and kind of talking about like his story that I don't think many people may or may not know, but back to the idea of like reminding each other that everyone has a story, right? We were talking a little bit about like giving back to community and society and showing up for one another. And I think so much of it is about, about that. And we were having such a great conversation. So I kind of want to go back to that. When you said the Dr. Dre thing, it kind of sparked that back to that conversation.
Absolutely. I mean, I just think I remember part of it where he was just doing so well. And, he walked away from all this money, all this fame, all this deals, because it was dangerous. It was getting to be a heated gang war. And he just said, I'm walking away. Not many people would do that. They'd be like, no, I'm going to keep my company. And like, he just had such clarity, he's like, this is not worth any of this. And I believe in myself and know I can go on to create more of this. So I think, the more people can have that instilled in them, whether they have to get up every day and do an affirmation or have friends remind them, but, like, be true to who you are, or stand your ground. And if you have to move on, move on. I think that's really important lesson. Don't ever stay in a bad situation and think it will get better, because it won't.
Yeah.
Make change when you need to make change. It's, it might be tough, but it's going to be worth it.
I also think about just like, opportunity and the connections that happen a lot in New York, and thinking about like something for us, and I'm even talking about myself, to think about is like, I got to this place because I had these opportunities, or I went after them, and not everyone has that as an option. So to like always think about how can I create opportunities for those as it relates to social impact for those who may not have those opportunities, especially in the world, the creative world, right?
Yeah.
So
No, I think creative and anywhere. I just think New York City, if Spark organization can replicate New York City's like energy and the way people connect, that would be incredible, because I think it's needed, because right now New York, that energy is not there right now completely, because we aren't able to be out in the same way we always are. But I think that's what's great about New York is my husband's from Australia. And so when he came to New York, he was blown away when, I said, oh, you should go talk to Condé Nast about a writing job. He's like, but I've never had a writing job. And I'm like, yeah, but you're a very talented writer, and it's hard to find talented writers. And, Australia, you just like, they want you to have a degree in writing, and then they want to see several writing jobs, and then they want to hire you. Whereas New York was like, you're a good writer. Let me see. Oh yeah, you are great. Let's start. There's that like very openness to trying if you feel a connection with someone. So I often say to people, also another piece of advice I give people is connecting with people is really important. Listening to someone else is very important, because if you can get along with someone, they'll probably give you a chance. Because often that is a really hard thing, is to get along with someone and feel like you've been heard and feel like you're part of something. It doesn't happen so easily, but if you can make that happen, I think people will give you an opportunity.
Well, chance, and then sometimes second chances, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have two more questions for you that are connected to food, because I'm always going to try to.
I know. Well, I love that about you. I learned so much about food from you.
One is, what's for dinner tonight? And two, so much of, I think, a way to live life, which goes back to a lot of what we talked about today, is joy. And so, what foods bring you joy?
Funny, two things. Dinner tonight, we're just coming from the Berkshires, so there's some great farms up there, and we grill every night, so I got obsessed with meat and seasoning meat. You're in my mind, Carol. I'm like, room temperature, seasoned right. Like, I became obsessed. I was like, don't touch the meat. And people would say, oh, we're going to bring meat to the grill. I was like, it better be here 2 hours before the grill. I need it room temperature. So we stopped at a farm on the way to visit a friend here in Connecticut, and we picked up some great meat, and we picked up some of that summer corn. So we're going to put that on the Barbie tonight. And what kind of food brings me joy? I mean, food that I can share. And I think, when I think of joy and an eating experience, one of my favorite experiences is P. Franco in London. And I know we talk about this a lot. And I'm dying to go there with you post-COVID. But those guys, Phil Bracey is incredible what he's done there. It's a wine bar, but there are no seats in this wine bar. There's one long table, and you come in, and 3 nights a week, there's one of the top chefs in London cooking off of hot plates and sending out plates. And everyone's standing around grabbing their plate and chatting. And this is interesting. I have tried talking to so many people about wine bars, saying you should try this model. And everyone keeps telling me, no, you have to have a seat for everyone, and that's that not willing to take a chance. I mean, I'm working right now with a wine bar, and we're talking about trying to make some of this happen, because I just think it's time. New Yorkers would love it, but no one's done it here yet. It's like, get rid of the seats, get people gathered around a big table, and let's just have a great night, meet over wine. I mean, let's do a Spark event like that. Where it's just,
now we're talking.
We can get Tammy in there with the natural wines, and you with the plates, and just get everyone, a good group of people talking. It's so much fun. Every night you go to P. Franco is just this great, joyous experience. So
I cannot wait to go there with you.
Yeah.
Was there anything else you want to speak to before we say goodbye? I mean, we covered a lot of amazing.
One thing I would say is that we are a creative agency focused on hospitality. So we work with a lot of chefs and hotels and restaurants, but what I found, I found this out early in my strategy career is that people remember 10% of what you say and 90% of what they see.
Oh, wow.
So graphic visualization is so important. Your graphics are paramount. And I'm very set on trying to get in touch with the Biden campaign or any like climate change group. I really want to partner with a group trying to make major social change or social injustice and help them with graphics, because I look at politics and there's been no disruption in how they present their graphics. And I'm a member of the ACLU, which I get newsletters every day, and it's just all text. And I'm like, if you just thought about this newsletter graphically for 10 minutes, you would increase the amount of people responding to this. And it's really on my mind lately that why is that not being disrupted? Why is this being done the same way? And I think they're overwhelmed with the issues. So I'm trying to get through to those groups. And I really hope to, use our agency to go beyond hospitality to help make that change through just the top graphics, top visual creative. I want our agency to be known to impact through visuals across many industries.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And I couldn't agree more. I think a lot about like during the Obama campaign and why is the name of the artist slipping my mind, but the icon.
Shepard Fairey, the poster. That's the only time I've seen politics, disrupted. And everyone remembers that poster. So I think we need these powerful images for social justice, climate change. Like, I don't want to just see the same political emails going out. Come on, you're talking to a younger generation that's growing up online, and like their attention span is about this small, and talking to them is not going to work. You need visuals. You need you need music. You need to get their attention. And I just think it's not being thought about enough. And I'd love to get in and help people think about that more, both strategy and graphically.